Good morning, everyone. You're watching Barnstable this morning. I'm Sara and we're continuing our conversations with our town councilors, and I welcome Precinct 10 Councilor Sara Cushing.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Great to see you. Thank you for coming in. So tell us about Precinct 10. What part of town is Precinct 10 in?
So Precinct 10 is a precinct in Marston's Mills. We have two, and my side of Marston's Mills kind of abuts the Osterville, Centerville, West Barnstable lines. So we're more of the eastern part. John Norman in 12 is the western part of Marston's Mills. So
great.
Yes, very large, but not very densely populated.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about what makes up, I would assume, kind of, no oceanside there in the mills, but you've got some ponds, mostly residential.
Lots of ponds, yes, lots of ponds, very residential. Not a lot of commercial business out where we are, but we do have the village center is in my precinct, and as we'll probably talk about at some point this morning, the village revisioning and the village center there. But yes, that's in my precinct as well.
Absolutely. So why don't we jump right into that, because that's
Sure.
the way we can start focusing on some of those precinct-centric issues. And of course, that village center has been in the works for a long time.
Yes.
A number of community meetings, very well attended. Tell me a little bit about what are some of the issues there that this process is trying to rectify.
Right. So the main issue is related to what we fondly refer to as the cash market intersection, which, as many people know, those who are from the mills, it literally is a horse and buggy intersection, and you can tell that very clearly if you're ever coming through there on foot or in a car. It's problematic from a traffic perspective and from a safety perspective with the addition of the lights there at the Route 28 intersection, and the data that the civil engineers have pulled. It's a very highly traveled road. It's a cut through from off Route 149 through the roundabout through the village center to 28 from the Mid-Cape Highway. Right. So there's that component, and the speed issue and safety issue. It needs to be reconfigured for a number of different reasons. And Joanne Miller-Buntich from the Growth Management Department, with a few outside consultants, civil engineering, as well as I'm going to call them horticulturists, the greenscape component, have worked very diligently over the last few years, since before I was elected, to really come up with a plan that would meet the needs for both traffic issues as well as pedestrian safety, as well as trying to create more of a village center feel to the village. So many of the other villages have very strong village centers, and they've got sidewalks and pedestrian and parking and all of that, which the Marston's Mills Village currently is very limited in some of those respects. So the goal was to kind of manage some of the concerns and some of the issues, but also really grow the center to have that village feel.
Exactly. And when you think about the village center, it is kind of small, but there's so much going on. You can walk from the library to the village hall, to the cash market, to the herring run or the pond, and all sorts of things that are going on. The Mills restaurant, which is delicious.
Yes.
So you want to be able to encourage that walkability.
That's exactly right. And in addition to the streetscape with adding pedestrian sidewalks and things like that and additional parking, really wanting to make a connection over to Mill Pond, because there's a herring run over there and it's absolutely gorgeous, but it's incredibly dangerous.
It is.
To park your car on the side of the road and hop out and walk over there. So they've really tried to make that connection. The bulk of the work is really from the Lovells Lane, Cotuit Road, all the way down to the Route 28 intersection. So really making that connection and that flow and encouraging people to walk around and patronize the stores and feel comfortable pushing their child in a stroller is really the goal.
Exactly. And what I love about this project and many other kind of reconfiguring projects is that the public process has been so great.
Yes.
There's been a number of meetings held right there in Marston's Mills, so all the residents can come. And I know obviously you as the town councilor and many other village residents have come in. Have you seen that as a positive, getting the community together and having their input?
Absolutely. And I think it's been a really great demonstration of that collaborative approach to this. And Joanne and her team have been really great in engaging the Village Association to host them at meetings to talk through the concerns and literally bring big poster boards of everything, and people can go up and ask questions and draw on it, mark it up. And this is I think we've had 3 or 4 meetings since I've been in office, the last of which was a few months ago, all of which are very, very well attended from both Village Association people who regularly attend the meetings, but also people who we don't see very often, and business owners, residents, people who abut some of the roads that are being discussed and things like that, and how are sidewalks going to impact them, Liberty Hall and the library. So it's been a very collaborative approach. It's great.
Great. So tell me, when we're looking at Precinct 10, Marston's Mills, some of the other issues that are of concern to your constituents.
Well, another big, I guess, project, if you qualify it as that, is the Marston's Mills Elementary School. So the school district closed the school a handful of years ago, decommissioned the school, and the town now owns that property and manages that property. So it's been vacant, I think, for about 4 or 5 years now. So the town has been trying to figure out what to do with that space and how to best utilize it, both from a building perspective and how could the building be used, but how could the fields be used as well, because they're used regularly with the playground and ball games and people walking their dogs and all of that. So they put out an RFP in the fall. The organization that was chosen from that RFP process was the Cotuit Center for the Arts.
Yes.
They are very interested in the space to expand their educational programs and their workshops. I'm sure we're all very familiar with what they're doing out on Route 28 in Cotuit, and it's really amazing stuff. And they were primarily interested in the school for educational space, I think rehearsal space, because there's a stage in the cafeteria, and it would really allow them to grow the way that they want to grow. And the village the Village Association, and everyone that I've talked to was really enthusiastic about having them in the village center, which just is such a nice synergy with the village revisioning project, because it would just make another connection to all that work that's going on in the Cash Market intersection. So there are plans to extend the sidewalks to go up to the school, and so it's just a really nice synergy. So Tom Lynch, Mark Ells, and Dave Anthony and procurement have been working very closely with the Cotuit Center for the Arts on working through some of the details logistically, and I think that conversation is moving forward. And I'm hopeful that we'll have some more movement, because there's an appetite, I think, for everybody for them to come into that space.
Absolutely. Let's talk about town-wide issues.
Yes.
And what do you see as some of the bigger, obviously, as we're talking now, the budget has kind of taken center stage, but as we look towards the future, what are the big issues the council's been dealing with?
So I think town-wide issues that we hear a lot about, obviously the shooting range is a very hot topic. The land swap, we should refer to it as the land swap, because that piece has to happen before any conversation about a shooting range. But as you know, and a lot of others who are paying attention to the details, the town commissioned a consultant to come in and do an evaluation to test some of the soil at the current shooting range property and come up with some recommendations on either remediation and not closing, or remediation and closing, and what does that remediation plan look moving forward.
Right.
So we got that information a couple of months ago, and he was supposed to come in the midst of the storms, and unfortunately we weren't able to meet with him. So it was just a few weeks ago that he came before the council and really walked through all of the data that they had collected, and what some next steps may be. I think those who are paying close attention recognize that whether it's remediation and not opening, or remediation and reopening a range, there's a huge price tag associated with both of those. And how that is going to be paid for, who is responsible for paying for it, and what the best interest of the community is a constant conversation, both at public comment, amongst councilors, and we're really, while it's been an incredibly slow process, and I assure you nobody is more aware of how slow the process has gone than the council, and we share frustrations, that same frustration, with many people, particularly those who are interested in the range reopening. It's been several years. Making sure we do it right, because it is a big deal, is the most important thing, and that we make the best decision for all of the people in the town of Barnstable, and not those who are either interested in keeping it closed for their own special interests, or or getting it opened for their own special interests. So there's a lot of moving pieces to it. It's very complex, and hopefully we'll have some resolution in the next couple of months.
Absolutely, but certainly I think it's important for people to know it is really, and I think people do understand, it's a multifaceted issue, so many different things are going on, and so it's not something that you want to make a decision on lightly.
Exactly, that's exactly right. So we had the town manager had signed a memorandum of agreement with the last administration with the advent of the new governor and changes at his top level. That memorandum of agreement is no longer valid, so that step we had taken a step, and now we're pausing again to evaluate the data and the information. And I think the foremost of everyone's mind is public safety, water safety, safety in and around that area, and so we don't want to move quickly and make the wrong decision, not taking all of those things into consideration.
Great. One more bigger issue.
Let's see. Well, I guess the opiate issue,
yes, of course,
is huge. Last night I attended a meeting at the Centerville Library that was hosted by, I believe it was the Democratic Town Committee, and it was a nonpartisan, multi-level panel of people, both in Barnstable and across the county, as well as Congressman Keating's aide was there to speak on his behalf, to really talk about the work that people are doing, the resources that are available, and programmatically how they're moving forward to help combat this issue. There's an organization, and I'm not going to get their name right, but it's a group of people who have lost children to addiction, and particularly heroin addiction and opioid addiction, and they are working with several towns across the Cape to place purple flags in remembrance of the people in those towns who lost their lives to addiction. And they reached out to me, and Tom Lynch was very agreeable in giving them space over at the Marston's Mills Elementary School on the Route 28 side, and they'll be planting those flags the Friday evening before Father's Day. I believe Orleans, Mashpee, Barnstable, and there's one other town on the Cape where people may see the flag. So I think it's important. It's touching, it's a long way of saying it's touching every community. It's not just a Hyannis issue. It's not just a Yarmouth issue. It's, you know, there are kids in my neighborhood who are struggling with addiction, who are dying, and parents who are losing children. It's a big deal. So I'm really excited that there are several people from across several different organizations that are looking at this, from the governor's office on down, to make some change and help people.
Wonderful. So Sarah, if the people of Precinct 10 would like to talk with you, if they have questions, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Email's the best, and my email address is cushing4council@gmail.com.
Great, and that's the number 4, correct?
Oh, it's FOR.
I'm
sorry, I'm old school.
That's good, that's good. Cushing for Council.
FOR, yes, thank you.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us here in Barnstable this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Sarah Cushing, of course, a Precinct 10 Town Councilor for Barnstable this morning. I'm Sara Colvin. Sara.